Hi everybody, and welcome to Big Joe's Journal. My name is Joe Tilden, and I'm the host of this program. Well, once again, tragedy is on our national scene. El Paso, Texas, people going shopping. This weekend in Texas was tax-free day, I guess, what they call it. When folks can go shopping, they don't have to pay any state taxes and all that. And since school in Texas begins very shortly, the end of this month, a lot of folks were down shopping, getting school supplies and getting them while, well, I won't say why the price was cheap. Nothing is cheap. But getting them while they didn't have to pay the added tax on it. And here comes some crazy who lived in Dallas. And, going from Dallas to El Paso, it's not like going from Rutland to Bennington. It's quite a bit longer. And he made his way down to El Paso. Now, why did he pick out El Paso? I don't know. But he told the arresting authorities down there that he hated Mexicans and he didn't want Mexicans invading Texas. Well, you talk about a twisted mind. And I understand, hearing the news today, the original estimate was 20 people killed. But one of the wounded died overnight, so the grand total now is 21. And if that weren't bad enough, way up in Dayton, Ohio, another mass shooting. In this particular case, that dumb jerk, one of his victims was his sister. Well, if he were looking for fame and glory, it didn't last very long, as law enforcement shot him and killed him. Well, you have to ask yourself, when's this going to stop? It's not safe to go shopping anywhere. There's no guarantee that we wouldn't have the same thing right here in Vermont. Say here in Rutland, where people are shopping at Walmart. If some crackpot might go in there and start opening up. Nowadays, you just don't know. Where is it safe? Well, you go out driving, you don't know if your highways are safe. Yesterday was a accident on 22A. I think it was up around Bridport. That closed off Route 22A for most of the day. And of course, since we don't get a paper on Monday, and I haven't seen the news lately, and I don't know if it was a fatality or not, but it was a serious enough accident. It was a limousine and a pickup truck, I believe, were involved. So, how bad was that? Well, I don't know. But you look around now, and this idea of mass slaughtering, seems to be getting worse, not better. And after every shooting, of course, the liar-in-chief comes out, says prayers are with the victims and all that, which is a line of bull. Fortunately, his daughter, Ivanka, her mother must have raised her with a lot of good qualities. Because Ivanka is not like her father, thank the Lord. And she had what I regarded as true sympathy for the victims and their families and for those that are wounded. But you have to ask yourself, what's promoting this? What's pushing it? Well, first of all, I think it's television. And I think it's the movies. What sells a movie now? Terrorism, blowing things up, killing people. And the more blood and guts, the more the movie sells. We have television. You have these detective stories. Somewhere along the line, there's going to be an explosion. Some people are going to get blown up. Again, you got blood and guts. You have folks that are not totally stable upstairs. They've got a window open in their attic. They see these things and they say, hey, that's the way to go. Well, I'm sure this nut in Texas figured, well, we got to do something about immigration, got to cut down on it. So he was down to El Paso, which is on the far western end of Texas, and it's right on the border, right across the Rio Grande. Guns down at people he did not know. And you ask, what's the sense? Now he was apprehended by law enforcement. According to all the reports, he has no remorse, no sympathy. As I understand it, the state of Texas is going to get first shot at him. They'll try him first. And the district attorney has recommended that he's going after the death penalty. The feds are going to go after him next, and they also want the death penalty. Well, you know, sometimes you say, maybe we shouldn't have the death penalty. But I think when you unjustly deprive another person of their right to life, and liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which we're guaranteed under our Constitution, and you take another citizen and you deprive that citizen of their constitutional right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, you forfeit your own life. And that's the way I look at it. Now, not everybody's going to agree. They're going to say, no, 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 lock them up, let them spend the rest of their life in prison. Well, this guy's going to go to prison. In Texas, there are a lot of people of Mexican descent that are doing time in Texas jails. This guy may not live long enough to go to trial even. Somebody in the inmate culture down there of Hispanic descent is going to say, well, you don't like Mexicans, we're going to take care of you. You've already been sentenced to death, and we're going to carry it out. And they will. You know, in your large prisons, even though you have security guards and TV cameras and everything monitoring everybody, in many cases the inmates still rule the roost. And you can't be protecting every inmate every minute of every day. So I think this character is probably won't live long enough to go to trial. In Dayton, Ohio, they don't have that problem. Police officers killed off this guy. 9 people, including his own sister, that he killed. You know, and you got to say, what in hell motivates these people? Well, we know where a lot of their motivation is coming from. And whether you want to admit it or not, it's coming from the White House. Our so-called leader has great friends in the NRA, which should be curbed. He thinks there are good people who are neo-Nazis, even though they want to kill off a lot of people in the United States, and a lot of them are doing it. They're good buddies. David Duke, who was the head of the Ku Klux Klan, was thrilled to death when Donald Trump was elected President of the United States. We're still friends with Saudi Arabia, despite the fact that under the orders of the Crown Prince over there, they kidnapped an American citizen and then butchered him. And we still regard Saudi Arabia as our ally. If we were going to knock out anything at all with a rocket or any other kind of a missile, probably should be some of those royal palaces in Saudi Arabia. Osama bin Laden, who financed his little foray that destroyed the Twin Towers in Washington, crashed into the Pentagon, the Twin Towers in New York rather, crashed into the Pentagon. and also those folks who overpowered the hijackers in Pennsylvania, and the plane crashed in a farmer's meadow, killing all people aboard. Financed through Saudi Arabia, our so-called ally. And I think another thing that contributes to the fact is the fact that we've been, in many of these people, we've been at war all their lives. We've been battling now Afghanistan 19 years. We're still fighting a smaller war in Iraq, Syria. The Iraqis don't want us there anymore. Afghanistan, as long as we're doing their fighting for them, they're going to let us do it. And we're losing valuable men over there. One of the last U.S. soldiers to be killed over there was on his 6th deployment. I mean, one deployment is enough. It's enough. The only place war is glorious is in your history books. Fighting that war is not glorious. It's bloodshed. The idea is, as General George Patton said, it's not for you to die for your country, but make the other son of a bitch die for his. And that's what war is. It's killing. Claiming ground and claiming ground by killing the opposition. And when you take body count and you talk about casualties on both sides, there's one group that is totally left out, and that is the civilians. The women and the children, the elderly, the very, very young, the very sick and the handicapped. When war is going on in their land, their homes are destroyed. Everything they've worked for is gone. Total disaster. And they're never going to get it back. They lose their lives, they lose their loved ones. And if you look at the young population in Iraq, in Syria, in Afghanistan, Pakistan, even in Iran, although Iran, they're better off than they are in these other countries. These kids aren't getting any schooling. They're not getting any kind of education except in the art of war. They're seeing war. They're seeing killing. And this is what they're growing up with. And you have to ask yourself, what are our future generations going to be like? Are we going to be so inhumane that this killing is going to be going on ad infinitum? I think it is time, and I would hope the next president gets us out of Afghanistan. There's no point staying there. There's no point losing more military personnel. We're not going to win a war. And obviously we're not going to do it. It's a stalemate. And if the Afghanis don't want the Taliban back in there, it's their country. Let them defend it. We should not be over there doing it for them. It's time to get out, time to come home. Time to bring our troops back. We've been there long enough. We've suffered enough casualties. And there's no sign of peace anywhere in the world. North Korea started firing off more rockets now. They've launched a few intercontinental ballistic missiles and dropped them in the Sea of Japan, which has to make the Japanese very, very nervous. They're firing them off the northeast side of the Korean Peninsula, which means they're probably targeted for Alaska. You know, our fearless fibbing leader goes over there, and that little jerk from North Korea makes a fool out of him. Works great for North Korea. Here's the head of the most powerful nation on earth dealing with me on a one-to-one basis. And what has come of it? Has North Korea stopped their development of rockets and missiles? Have they cut down on the size of their army? Not at all. Now they're trying to improve their navy. Supposedly they're developing a nuclear submarine under our very noses. They aren't going to come to any agreement. We're better off dealing with Iran and sitting down at the table with Iran, getting back into this treaty deal, getting back into the Paris Accords. Say, it's not our policy to starve people, to starve children, to starve the elderly, to starve the sick, to deny them medications that they need. That's not the United States. That's the current administration. And the biggest mistake we could make is to go to war with Iran. So the last thing we need is another war. Get out of the Middle East. They have been there, those countries have been there for thousands of years. They've had their wars and they've had their troubles. If you don't believe it, just look at the Bible. The number of empires that grew up in that part of the world and then collapsed because they were overpowered by a stronger empire. You go back to the days when the Egyptians were powerful and they were overcome by the Assyrians. And the Assyrians in turn were hammered by the Babylonians. And the Babylonians by the Persians, which is now Iran. And the Persians were run into the ground by the Greeks, and the Greeks in turn were conquered by the Romans. So it's been a history of turnover, conflict, conflict, conflict. Thousands of years those countries have been there. And here in the United States, we're not even 300 years old. We're not going to change those countries. We're not going to solve anything over there. It's time to come home, time to bring our troops home. And let's pay attention to what's going on in other parts of the world. Keep our eye on Russia. Trumpy's friend Putin. Well, Russia's interfering in our elections. They still are. Our intelligence sources say that. Yet our fearless leader goes over there and asks, Mr. Putin, are you interfering in our elections? Well, of course not. He lies. He's lying to a liar. Liar 2 buys into liar 1's lie. And there you are. But, you know, our fibbing leader, we know he doesn't have any backbone. He doesn't have any kind of courage or guts. Of course, he wouldn't call out Putin face to face. He's probably afraid of him. If Harry Truman would have called him out. So now you're lying. You have interfered in our election. Knock it off, or you're going to have some very, very serious consequences. And make him back down. Russia has no fear of us now. North Korea has no fear of us now. China does not fear us. Because they know that with Mr. Chicken in the White House, all they've got to do is tell him what a great guy he is. Well, he's anything but a great guy. And he's as yellow as his hair. You look at the shootings that have gone on. He comes out, he says, expresses sympathy. He's ordered flags to be flying at half staff. That's the right thing to do. But how about calling out his buddies at the NRA and calling out the people in Congress that are too chicken to put in some gun control legislation? And never mind this baloney that it violates people's Second Amendment rights. It doesn't. The NRA always brings this up. Why do you violate the Second Amendment rights? People have a constitutional right to have a gun. But also the state, the country has the obligation to regulate how those weapons are used and the nature of those weapons. And that does not violate the Second Amendment in any way, shape, or manner. If you want to know who's encouraging, not intentionally, but who is more or less encouraging these terrorist things that are going on in our country, if our president really wants to know, all he's got to do is take a look in the mirror. His praise and his friendship of the NRA, of neo-Nazi organizations, it just encourages these groups. And this goes on and on. It can be stopped. It's going to take will. It's going to take determination. But we need a leader who has that skill and that determination. And we need a Congress that's got backbone enough to stand up to the NRA and pass legislation requiring checks before guns are sold and make it federal law. No gun dealer can just sell to anybody off the street. You're going to make a sale, you're going to do a background check. The same as you do if you're going to go to work for a government agency. There's a background check. Do the same thing if you're going to buy a weapon. And limit the kinds of weapons that can be sold. You're not infringing on anybody's freedom, anybody's constitutional right. The obligation of government is to protect the people. And until it pushes through legislation that's going to do that, they're not doing their job. And this is where Congress is falling flat. Even if no bill comes down from the White House, somebody in Congress has got to stand up and introduce a bill. It's going to regulate the sale of firearms. It's going to require background checks. It's going to limit the types of weapons that can be sold to the public. But again, that takes courage, and that takes standing up and doing the job you're supposed to do. Excuse me, the job you were elected to do. And so far I haven't done. Well, there are other items were going on, or have gone on this week. For those of you that are sports fans, we'll talk on a lighter note. If you're a Red Sox fan, these are not good days. The Sox have lost 8 in a row now, swept by Tampa Bay at Fenway Park. The home of the Red Sox, Tampa Bay, has taken 8 out of 9 at Fenway Park. The New York Yankees have taken 11 out of 15 from the Red Sox. Last year, the Red Sox won the season series from the Yankees. This year, they've lost it already. Swept 4 games in New York. And you kind of say, well, when's that going to end? Well, that could end tonight. Or, wait a minute, I guess it's, tomorrow night. When the Kansas City Royals, who are one of the poorest teams in the big leagues now, comes into Fenway Park. And believe me, if the Red Sox can't sweep them, there's something awful wrong. So as the Yankees move on, you look at some of the other things going on in baseball. The new trading deadline, which was July 31, the Red Sox did nothing. The Yankees didn't do anything either, but they don't need to with that talented farm system they've got. If you look at all the injuries the Yankees have had, and they're almost running away with the American League East. And they've been doing it with guys that normally would be in the minor leagues. But they come up to the big time, they're hungry, they're playing their hearts out. And it shows. I'm not a Yankee fan, but I take my hat off to them for the job they've done this year. When you see people taking what they have and doing the best with it and making it pay off, you have to take your hat off to them. Are they going to go all the way? I think Houston has become the power in the American League with the deals that they made, the way they improved their pitching staff. They added two top-notch pitchers to their pitching staff, which already was good. Now they've got 5 starters. Anyone could be an ace on any other staff. And they've got those 5 starters, and the rest of the way, Houston's going to be a tough cookie. In fact, I think in the American League, they're going to take, they're going to take it all. The National League's still wide open. The Braves still maintaining a league in the East. The Washington Nationals are challenging. And that American League or National League East is a tight proposition. 4 of the 5 teams, I'd say, could be considered contenders. That's the Braves, the Nationals, the Phillies, and of course the New York Mets, who also improved their pitching staff over the trading deadline. Unfortunately, up here in Rutland, Vermont, our sports, our sports people seem to think there are only 2 big league teams that count, the Yankees and the Red Sox. We never hear about the National League, and we never hear about the other teams in the American League. Channel 3, out of Burlington, you got Big Dum Dum there, who's the sports editor. He's got hockey on his brain. I know he played football over at Dartmouth. I don't think he ever wore a helmet, though. I think he missed out on that. He made too many tackles and got tackled too many times himself, and he had to take some hits in the head, and he never quite recovered from it. But everything is hockey, hockey, hockey. Who cares about hockey in July and August? It's baseball season. But, if you listen to him, you'd never know there were other teams in the big leagues besides the Yankees and the Red Sox. And let's talk about the Shrine Bowl. It's hard to believe now the Shrine Bowl is behind us. And the Rutland Fair is only 1 week down the road. And you got to say, man, this summer's flying right by, and it sure is. Well, Vermont, the last 3 years, the game's been played at Castleton, has done pretty well. They won 3 in a row. They were the favorites this year. But New Hampshire came with different strategy, and Vermont's 3-year winning streak is over. So New Hampshire leads in the series 48-16 with 2 ties. I think Vermont was in trouble right off the bat. New Hampshire, Vermont got the ball to start off with, but New Hampshire stopped them, went in, got the lead touchdown, and then instead of kicking off, they did an onside kick and recovered. And you say right there, these guys are going to play a different kind of game. Anyway, New Hampshire wins it this year, 21-9. With that, may Almighty God in His infinite wisdom continue to bless these United States of America God love you. Have a great week. We'll see you all next week.